A pressing topic amongst Texas Longhorn fans right now. One of the best teams in the country is Quinn Ewers holding the Longhorns back from being a national championship contender. It gets spicy today on Locked on Longhorns.
You are Locked on Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Today's episode of Locked on Longhorns is brought to you by FanDuel. Start the season in the middle of the season, whatever point you want to start gambling on FanDuel with a big return. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $550 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's episode of Locked on Longhorns, once again, the biggest question surrounding this Texas Longhorns football team with 2 regular season games to go against Kentucky and Texas A&M is Quinn Ewers holding the Texas Longhorns back. We talk about that in the first segment. In the second segment, I respond to some of your YouTube comments from the Arkansas reaction and takeaway show with Tony. A lot of fans, right, gave me a lot of backlash, which is fine. But I got a lot of backlash from my comments saying we were asking for too much from Quinn Ewers. All right. I got a lot of backlash for saying that. So respond to some of your YouTube comments. And then in the last segment, a Texas basketball update. The men are 3-1. The women are 3-0. Both teams looking really good. So we discussed what they've been doing recently. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked on Longhorns, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. So this all started when we were doing our Arkansas takeaway and reaction. The question, the prompt, is Quinn Ewers holding the Texas Longhorns back from being a championship team or contender? And like I said, this started when we were doing the Arkansas takeaways and reactions, me and Tony. And I got on Twitter after the game. You know, Texas wins 20-10. It's a rivalry game on the road. It wasn't pretty, but I think a lot of people kind of assumed that Arkansas would be a dogfight, you know, just because, you know, that's a team that's going to play with pride. It's a group of players and a group of fans that hate Texas. It wasn't going to be easy just go in there and win big. Now, we saw the way that LSU and Ole Miss were able to dominate offensively, and coming off that Florida game, we expected Texas to do more of the same, and instead they kind of reverted back to that stagnant offense we had seen the couple of weeks prior to that before the bye against Georgia and Vanderbilt. So I understand the concern, but I get on social media and it's like a bench Quinn Ewers fest. And I did think that was a little bit extreme. I thought that reaction was a little bit harsh. And so I mentioned it on the podcast and then, of course, caught a lot of backlash because that is kind of the narrative amongst Texas fans right now, that Quinn Ewers is holding this team back, right? And so before I get into, you know, really just my analysis on that and then the YouTube comments in the second segment regarding some things that were said, you know, in response to me on the show yesterday and just kind of responding live, I want to read this quote from Inside Texas. And I don't necessarily agree or disagree with this quote from Inside Texas, but the fact that they put this out told me that it was just more than a few tweets, right? This is not just a few people tweeting their thoughts about Quinn Ewers. This is noise at this point. Like, it is officially noise. This is officially a narrative, right? This is officially something that is making waves among the Longhorn fan base, that Quinn Ewers may be a liability for this Texas football team. So I'm going to read this quote. An old Greg Popovich quote about Manu Ginobili sums up the Quinn Ewers experience perfectly. I went from trading him on the spot to wanting him to cook breakfast tomorrow. Here are the blunt force facts about Quinn Ewers. He is a flawed early round NFL draft prospect. He misses throws viewers thinks he should make, particularly those of the deep post variety. And he's actively fighting off a curse from Dr. Pepper, whatever that means. But what else is true about the Longhorns quarterback? Ewers is a bona fide winner. A factual statement. He has lost 2 regular season games in the last 2 seasons. He has the support of his coaches and teammates, and he is a passer who can make throws that most other quarterbacks miss. So that was just a quote from Inside Texas. Once again, interesting that they put it out. That tells me this is noise, right? This is officially a narrative. Now, I want to address my comments that I made about Quinn Ewers on the Takeaway and Reaction show about Arkansas. And basically what I said was Quinn Ewers great against Arkansas? No. Did we expect him to put on another performance like he did against Florida, pushing the ball down the field, 333 yards and 5 touchdowns against a passing defense that was ranked 125th in the country? Yes. Can you make a viable argument based on a limited sample size that Arch Manning may be a better option for this Texas football team right now? Possibly. Even though it was against ULM and Mississippi State, we did see a different level of offensive firepower with Arch Manning in the game and against UTSA when Quinn Ewers got hurt relative to what we've seen from Quinn Ewers for a large part of the season outside of the Florida game. Has Quinn Ewers made the leaps this season that we expected him to when we brought him back, right? And he expected to be a Heisman contender, be one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and be a bona fide first-round pick in the 2025 NFL draft? I do not believe so, right? I think we are largely seeing the version of Quinn Ewers that we saw last year and maybe even some regression at times. That is all true. What is also true and what I think is unfair to Quinn Ewers, it is way too early for us to create this narrative that without a shadow of a doubt, or it's a foregone conclusion that we cannot win a championship with Quinn Ewers. I think it's way too early to try to determine that. And I think when I said that we are asking too much from Quinn Ewers, I'm not saying that we should not be asking our year $3 million NIL quarterback, first round, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, said by all coming into the season. I am not saying that we should not be asking Quinn Ewers to be better. I am not saying that we should not be demanding more from Quinn Ewers. And I certainly could have articulated my point a little bit better. What I am saying and what I was saying is that at this point, we have seen over 20 starts in 3 years from Quinn Ewers. At what point, with I guess 5, 6, 7 games left in his college career, do we acknowledge that this is what Quinn Ewers is and what Quinn Ewers has largely been? He is inconsistent. Some weeks he looks great. Most weeks he looks like he did against Arkansas or somewhere in between. And what I was saying is that we still, with like 5, 6 games left in Quinn Ewers' career, are begging, pleading for him to be the number 1 overall prospect in his class, one of the highest graded prospects of all time, when we haven't seen that consistently since he stepped on campus. It's not just going to magically show up. This is who Quinn Ewers is. What I was saying is we are asking too much from Quinn when we should be focusing on everybody around him. I'm not blaming the running game, but I'm saying we're not going to see the best version of Quinn Ewers unless we start to run the ball better. I'm not blaming the offensive line, but I'm saying we are not going to see the best version of Quinn Ewers unless we block a little bit better, unless our receivers are a little bit better, unless this defense continues to play at an elite level, because Quinn Ewers, as we've seen for 3 years, is not a force multiplier. Quinn Ewers, as we've seen for 3 years, cannot put this team on his back and lead them to victory. What Quinn Ewers is a product of everything around him. So we need to stop asking Quinn Ewers to be the best quarterback in the country. And we need to ask Quinn Ewers to play within the system, which is very good defense, an elite running game, and Quinn Ewers making throws off of that. If he does that, if we keep Quinn Ewers in a box, and I know the narrative is, why should we have to put Quinn Ewers in a box? Because that's who Quinn Ewers is. If we keep Quinn Ewers in that box and do not ask him to win us games, we ask him not to lose us games and not turn the ball over, Texas can win a championship. I fully believe this with Quinn Ewers. And a lot of it has to do with the field. When you look at it, there's no 2021 Georgia. There's no 2019 LSU. There's no 2001 Miami. There is no team this year that just can't be beat. There is no team this year that is going to take a Superman performance to knock them off. Every team in the field has flaws. Oregon, they just almost lost to Wisconsin. They almost lost to Idaho and Boise State. Ohio State, they were in a dogfight with Marshall, and they lost to Oregon. You're telling me Will Howard at the quarterback position can't be beat. Penn State, whenever you need them to put on offense, they don't, right? It's been like that for years. Penn State, they can't score when they need to. Indiana, give me a break. I know they're undefeated. We're about to see what that means against Ohio State on Saturday. Probably nothing, right? BYU, they just lost to Kansas. Tennessee lost to Arkansas. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. Miami, they're down double digits every week. Alabama, they lost to Vanderbilt, right? Should have lost to South Carolina. Ole Miss, they lost to Kentucky. Georgia, Carson Beck throws 3 interceptions every week, even though they beat us. So I can't talk too much, right? Carson Beck is a walking turnover machine. This Georgia does not look like 21 and 22 Georgia. And then Boise State, you telling me we can't beat Boise State? If we play elite football, which we have the potential to do, around Quinn Ewers and ask Quinn Ewers to play clean football and make the throws that are there, this Texas football team absolutely can win a national championship. Can Quinn Ewers be better? Absolutely. Is Arch Manning better than Quinn Ewers at this point? Possibly. But Quinn Ewers is our quarterback, and if we're going to win a championship, we need him to play within the system, and we need everybody around him, specifically and most importantly, the running game, to be elite. And if we have an elite infrastructure around Quinn Ewers, he can be a national championship quarterback at the University of Texas. A quick word from our sponsors, and then I'll read some of your thoughts directly because I know a lot of y'all disagree with what I just said. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by Return On You. Longhorn fans, listen up. You need to download the Roy app, Return On You. Once again, you have heard us talk about Roy this season and how they are revolutionizing the NIL industry. Roy allows you, the fan, to have a say in who gets the NIL money. And here's what I absolutely love about Roy, Return On You. You get your money back if that player transfers, especially in this new era of college football. It can be anxiety feeling, right? To, put money on any player in terms of NIL, but Roy will make sure that that is not a bad investment for you. Roy is helping us keep our team intact, and it's actually good for the game long term. When you look at the way that Alfred Collins has played these last couple of games, obviously he's going to enter the NFL draft after the season, but the way that he is playing for the Texas Longhorns right now makes you want to show a little bit of support for Alfred Collins. Makes you want to put a little bit of money in his bank account. You know what I'm saying? Just for him providing such good play and such a good performance for the Texas Longhorns over the last couple of weeks. If you want to do that, download the Roy app. You can see what the logo looks like if you're watching on YouTube, or go to joinroy.com. Let me put that. Yeah. Let me get that logo up there on the screen for y'all. You know what I'm saying? If you're watching YouTube, there you go. You can see it. All right. If you want to support, Alfred Collins, anybody else, you can see the logo on YouTube. Don't want to lie to you. Right. So when we look at it once again, my locked on player of the week, Roy player of the week, Alfred Collins. Right. Every contribution counts. $10-$20. It all adds up and it's going to help your favorite player stay put. Join me and show some love for Alfred Collins or anybody on this Texas football team. Colin Simmons, true freshman, had a really good, game against Arkansas. Throw him a little cheddar. Make sure he stays at Texas, right? Download the Roy app or go to joinroy.com today. Use promo code Locked On. Every athlete from every team is there. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Go to joinroy.com for full terms. Roy, support the players and change the game. All right, so getting into directly some of the backlash that I received from my Arkansas episode. And when I say backlash, it's not, no animosity at all, right? I'm a podcast host. Everybody's not going to agree with what I said. I did feel like we let Tony skate a little bit. Everybody was on me. You know what I'm saying? Nobody got on the guest. I know that he said, Quinn Ewers may be a weak link on this team as well. But, it's all good. So I do always respond, this shameless plug. I do always respond to YouTube comments. Every comment I try to respond to if I can. So, I think it's cool. I'm not, tooting my own horn or beating my own chest, but I do think it's cool that, y'all can talk to me directly. Right. So, throw a comment. You see it on the bottom of the screen, right? Throw a comment. I will respond. We will be able to actively engage back and forth. But these are some of the reactions that I got to my thoughts yesterday on Quinn Ewers, saying we're asking too much from him. He is good enough to win a championship. And the reaction after the Arkansas game was harsh in a game that he led us to a win by 10 points, regardless of how ugly it may have looked at times. Okay. I've been watching your show for a while now. Certainly appreciate that. And I've never disagreed with you so much. We are not asking too much of Quinn Ewers. I could have articulated that a little bit better, but generally, maybe we're not, right? We should be expecting him to be a Shadur Sanders, Cam Ward level, Jackson Dart level quarterback, and we have not seen that. He is the obvious weak link. Everyone knows it. Analysts who only casually watch the Horns see it's him. He is the 5-star recruit in his third year. He is getting paid the big NIL money. If you don't want the responsibility and demands, don't take the cash. The offensive line is above average to really good. The running backs are younger and had less experience, so do not place the blame on them. I certainly wasn't trying to. Can Blue be better? Can the offensive line block better? Yes. But when teams don't fear passes beyond 15 yards, you make it really hard on your run game. Certainly true. Quinn Ewers can't think quickly. Sark has clearly had to dumb down the playbook for Quinn Ewers. I'll trust Sark's pedigree and track record with quarterbacks. Hell, he made Mac Jones millions with similar talent level and wide receivers. I don't know about, never mind. At least 3 NFL wide receivers this year. We had 3 drafted last year, and yet name the game where Quinn Ewers went beast mode. The problem is Quinn Ewers, he isn't a dog. He's pretty decent to sometimes piss poor. I don't really disagree with anything that you said specifically. I do think that we can ask the running game to be a little bit better, and I do think we can ask the offensive line to be a little bit better. But certainly, in that same breath, we can ask Quinn Ewers to be better. But it just goes back to my point of, like, we know who Quinn Ewers is. I don't think that we've seen the ceiling of Jaden Blue and Trey Wisner. I don't think we've seen the offensive line consistently be a dominant unit like we expect them to. I just think at this point, expecting Quinn Ewers to make another leap is not going to happen, and you have to work with what he is, which is a product of the system. Certainly appreciate the comment. This shit is so insane. We've lost 1 game this year, and it seems like everybody's waiting on the sky to fall. Quinn doesn't have to be a Heisman Trophy quarterback for us to win. Our defense is legendary elite. I know, Jonathan, we are not asking him to win games. We're asking him to execute a 4-minute offense to put away a game that our defense won. Our defense in Matthew Golden. Everybody's saying Quinn was bad yesterday. I think that was just a smash mouth SEC game. When we needed him, he showed up. I largely agree, right? When it was 13-10, Quinn Ewers went down the field and got us a touchdown. When we needed to convert a 4th and 2 to seal the game, Quinn Ewers took a read option and sealed the game. So I largely agree with these comments, right? Not saying that Quinn Ewers may not be the weak link on this team, but I did think it was a big overreaction to a game that Quinn Ewers put away himself when we needed it the most and won 20-10 on the road in a tough environment. Stop it. We see that Arch is aggressive down the field with the deep ball. Quinn cannot throw the deep ball and is not tough. We have the weapons. You have to go down the field with the deep ball, with the weapons we have. What is the use of having these burners, fast players? His demeanor shows that he is not a dog. Quinn is the weak link of the Longhorns offense. Quinn will be the reason we will not win a national championship. Once again, we can't make these pre-excuses, right? Like, we can't already say on November 19th, this is why we're not going to win in the playoffs. I think Quinn Ewers is good enough to win a national championship. We have to go out there every Saturday and line it up. All of those teams I mentioned in the first segment have flaws as well. To me, it is a huge overreaction. Even with Quinn Ewers not making the leap we expected this year, it is a huge overreaction at this point to say that Quinn Ewers is not good enough to win a championship. That what we've seen from Quinn Ewers and the rest of this football team is not good enough to win a championship. Now, if he goes in there against A&M and just absolutely, shits the bed, then maybe we'll revisit that conversation. I just think it's a little bit of an overreaction right now, and I still think Texas is in the position they want to be. I don't feel like the players in that locker room feel as though they can't win with Quinn. I don't think so. Ewers can't hit the deep ball consistently. True. True. I do agree with the sentiment that Quinn Ewers is holding us back. We can't play complementary football with our elite defense with quarterback play like this. That being said, Arch is not the answer. We would have needed him playing all along, in my opinion, to have him start. Throwing Arch in at this point in the season would be insane unless we absolutely have to. Quinn Ewers can still win every game, but he needs to be better. Kentucky and Texas A&M are going to come after Quinn Ewers, so he better be ready. I think the problem with Quinn Ewers is that he's stunning his development big time by leaving high school early to get that bag and go to Ohio State. He should have played that key year in high school as a senior and then come straight to Texas and redshirted so he could develop. condition, and learn, like Arch is doing. Missing his senior high school year and then not playing football for a year and then starting in year one at Texas has had a detrimental effect on his development, in my opinion. I hope that bag he got was worth it because he is likely losing much more than that with his plummeting draft stock. He's certainly, what they say, he got like $1 million. I mean, he's definitely probably lost more than $1 million if he doesn't go in the first round. Also, that 5th-year option, that's another year on the contract potentially. I really agree with this. I think this was very well put. You know what I mean? Like, Quinn Ewers needs to be better. He could be holding us back. Maybe we can't play complimentary football. But to say that we can't win a championship with Quinn Ewers, I just don't see it. I still think Texas is one of the best teams in the field. Ewers has been quarterback one probably since he was 6 years old. Yet we have to build his confidence with easy throws each game. He is good enough to beat who we should beat. But when it hits the playoffs, if he doesn't show up, we lose, i.e. Georgia. You could have knocked him over with a feather that whole game. Don't disagree. And he probably has been quarterback one since he was 6 years old. So, the fact that we have to get him into a rhythm, you certainly made a good point there. Opposing coaches since Kalen DeBoer last year have known that Quinn Ewers is the weak link in an otherwise complete team and have exploited it. If you watch the tape on the Arkansas game, you see that the O-line is doing its job. The receivers are getting open. Sark is doing everything possible from a scheme perspective, and we're still relying on the defense to bail us out every week. Just substitute Jackson Dart, Diego Pavia, Jalen Milroe, even Carson Beck with this team, and what would these scores look like? Quinn has a great mid-range arm when there's little pressure and a terrible secondary, but he can't move or think quickly enough to shine in the SEC, let alone in the NFL. It's too late for Arch to start, so this is who we have. But if Texas has a ceiling, it's Quinn. Can't really disagree. Went from Quinn being in New York for the Heisman at the beginning of the season to, that's just how Quinn is with 2 games left. Inconsistent as a 3-year starter. ... I think that's a good place to leave it. All right, a quick word from our sponsors, and then we get into the Texas basketball team, right? The show gets a little bit rosier, right? One team 3-1, the men, the women are 3-0. We discuss after the break. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns also brought to you by FanDuel. Tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the National Football League all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. All right, so talking about the Texas basketball team, men and women's, once again, the men 3-1. They did have that opening game of the season loss to Ohio State. But since then, they've won 3 straight games, albeit against inferior opponents. And then the Texas women 3-0, albeit against inferior opponents. But, you got to win who's in front of you. This past Saturday, while Texas was taking care of business against Arkansas, the Texas men's basketball team was beating Mississippi Valley State for their 3rd straight victory on the season, 89-43. Really good performances from a few players. Arthur Kaluma, 18-7, I believe, coming off of a 15-10 performance. So he's really settled into that number 2 role behind Trey Johnson while we try to figure out what's going to happen with Tremont Mark and, how much of the season he'll miss potentially with that ankle injury. Caden Shedrick had a really good game, 12.7 rebounds. And what I love, no 3-point attempts. I know you can hit them in practice. It's not working in the game. Be a big man. I know it's not sexy anymore, but be a big man, Caden Shedrick. 2 steals and 4 blocks, being that dominant post presence that Texas needs to play inside out and be one of the best teams in the country. Trey Johnson just continues to be an absolute dog. 18 points. 6 of 9 shooting, 3 for 5 from 3. Once again, shooting over 50% from the 3-point line on the season. This is a true freshman, right? A true freshman looking like one of the best players in the country, period, regardless of classification. And then Julian Larry, we've seen a lot of Jordan Pope and Julian Larry kind of, splitting the point guard duties. I think thus far, Julian Larry has probably been the better option, but he's still coming off the bench. 13 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, sharing point guard duties once again with Jordan Pope. So the team has looked really good against 3 straight inferior opponents. Now they have a tough test against an undefeated Syracuse team on Thursday in Brooklyn. It'll be good to see this Texas team get a big win against Syracuse, albeit they're not ranked. But when you've been playing Mississippi Valley State and Houston Christian, it'd be nice to go beat a power team in Syracuse with a lot of history, right? And then if you're playing them next year, they'd have Keon Anthony. So, that'd be even, a better game to watch. But nonetheless, Syracuse, a tough matchup for Texas. We'll see how they look on Thursday night. And then the Texas women, 3-0, certainly a national championship contender in those 3 wins, right? Average margin of victory of 46 points. They won their first game by 72 points, and then 37, and then 30. So they're averaging beating teams by 46 points a game right now, which is crazy. But this Texas basketball team is really good, led by Vic Schaefer, and they have every opportunity. I know South Carolina is going to be the favorite. A lot of talk is going to be about, USC and Juju Watkins, but Texas certainly can win a national championship this year. Madison Booker, coming off a great season last year, averaging 14, 8, and 4 so far, did miss a game. Rory Harmon coming off of that ACL, 8 points, 3 rebounds, and 8 assists. Taylor Jones giving you 15 points a game. Shea Holly giving you 11 points a game, thus far in the starting lineup. And then you're averaging over 42 bench points a game. Obviously, when you're beating teams by 72, 37, and 30, you have an opportunity to get a lot of bench players in the game and for them to make plays. But we've seen 3 true freshmen be a big part of that, right? So everybody's eating on this Texas basketball team right now, and their next game will be on Wednesday at home against Charleston State. So really good things from the basketball team, men and women's, and hopefully the men can get to 4-1 against Syracuse, and hopefully the women can get to 4-0 against Tarleton State. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Peace.